My one job was to look out for her, and that has not happened. And I'm going to keep looking out for her now as best I can.
Lynette is my life, and we've been together almost half my life, and we belong to each other, and I mean to keep looking.
He didn't know he was being recorded. 3 days after Lynette disappeared, before the arrest, before the lawyers, before every word became careful and calculated, Brian Hooker picked up the phone and spoke freely. No script, no attorney, no warning, and the word that came out of his mouth, in his own voice, without filters, is now sitting in the hands of investigators. He said she basically just bounced off the dinghy, not fell, not was knocked overboard, not lost her balance, bounced. One word, unscripted, unrehearsed, and it is going to haunt this case. That is the first of 3 things this video is going to show you.
Hello, honey. I just got a call from Oaktown Search and Rescue, and I found a flotation device that I threw to Mom when she fell overboard, and so they haven't found her yet, but they can now focus all of their efforts in a smaller area, and they're still out there searching today. So I just wanted to update you and let you know. I love you. I'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.
Second is the life vest. Brian told his stepdaughter in a voicemail and told investigators that he threw a flotation device to Lynette when she went overboard. Our former FBI agent Jennifer Coffindaffer heard that and stopped everyone following this case with one sentence. She said, "That doesn't make sense. If she could grab it, that would be the end of the story." Lynette was a strong swimmer, a decade-long sailor, a woman who grew up on lakes and water. She never grabbed it. Why? The third thing is the devices, the phones, the tablets, the DVR from the Soulmate, all seized under a search warrant, all being analyzed right now. Coffindaffer told Newsweek exactly what investigators are looking for. She said, "They need to look at his Google searches. I'll be interested to see if he Googled anything. What does a man search online in the weeks before his wife disappears? Stay with us." Because by the end of this video, you will understand why day 15 of this investigation is about what Brian Hooker said and searched when he thought nobody was paying attention. Every claim is attributed to a named source. This is not speculation. Before we go further, if this case matters to you, subscribe right now. Hit the notification bell. This investigation is moving fast, and when something breaks, you need to be here. Drop a comment. Tell us what you think is on those devices. And if this video gives you something the other coverage hasn't, like it. It helps more people find this analysis. Her name is Lynette Hooker, 55 years old, from Onstead, Michigan. Not a casual tourist, a decade-long sailor, a woman who grew up around lakes and boats, who knew open water the way most people know their own street. And for over 10 years, she and Brian documented their life at sea, the sailing hookers, sea turtles, sunsets bleeding into the horizon. 2 people building what looked from the outside like the perfect retirement. Her last Instagram post was April 4th, the day she disappeared. The caption said, "Not going anywhere for a while." She had no idea. That same evening, Brian and Lynette left Hopetown's Abaco Inn in their 8-foot dinghy heading to the Soulmate, their yacht anchored near Elbow Cay. According to Brian, she fell overboard. According to Brian, the engine cut out when she took the safety lanyard into the water. According to Brian, the winds and currents drove him 4 miles in the wrong direction. He arrived at Marsh Harbor Boatyards at 4 a.m., 8.5 hours after Lynette went into the water. He told the security guard 2 words. "She's in the water. No coordinates, no direction, no urgency." 2 words. Brian was arrested April 8th, released without charges April 13th, promised to stay and search, left the Bahamas April 16th. He is in Michigan. The cadaver dogs are still working the shorelines. Carly Aylesworth, Lynette's daughter, is still in the Bahamas. And the devices from the Soulmate are being read right now by people looking for one specific thing, what Brian Hooker was thinking about before April 4th. Let's start with the recording, not the arrest, not the domestic violence history, not the maps, not the lanyard, the recording. 3 days after Lynette disappeared, April 7th, Blaine Stevenson called Brian Hooker. Blaine and Marnette were friends of the couple, and they had met in Bradenton, Florida in late 2023. They had sailed together. They knew Brian and Lynette as people, not just as names in a news story. Blaine recorded the call. Brian did not know. CNN confirmed this. Stevenson told CNN he recorded it to capture the location details Brian was describing. He was not familiar with the area and wanted to help coordinate the search. Not to trap Brian, not to expose him, to help find Lynette. But what Brian said, freely, naturally, without a lawyer in the room, is now part of the evidence record. It has been heard by investigators, and it contains a word that nobody covering this case has examined the way it deserves. Brian said, "She basically just bounced off the dinghy. Stop, not fell. Not was knocked overboard by a wave. Not lost her balance in rough seas. Bounced." That word describes a physical event with a specific character. Contact, collision, something hitting a surface and rebounding. When a ball bounces, it hits something first. When a person bounces off a dinghy, something caused that collision before they went into the water. If your wife lost her balance in choppy conditions and went over the side, you would say she fell. She went over. She was knocked by a wave. You would not say she bounced, unless something hit her before she went in. And Brian chose that word freely, naturally, without thinking about how it sounded, because he did not know he was being recorded. There is more from that same call. He said the wind blew us apart so fast. He said, "I think she tried to swim back to the sailboat." That is a different direction from what he told police, that he last saw her swimming toward shore. Two different directions, same event, different audiences. And then came the phrase his attorney has never been able to walk back. He said, "It was a cascade of failures, and it's something I'm never going to forgive myself for." Cascade of failures. We have heard that phrase before, but in the context of this recording, a man speaking freely without knowing he is being preserved, those words land differently. A cascade of failures is the language of accidents, of systems breaking down beyond anyone's control. But Captain Bill, a licensed boat captain with friends anchored next to the Soulmate that night, confirmed publicly that the engine could be restarted without the lanyard. You pull the button out. You pull the cord. The engine fires. That is not a system failure. That is a choice. Every single thing Brian described as a failure was a decision, and he described them all as failures to a friend. On a call he did not know was being recorded. There is a principle in interrogation science that investigators apply when analyzing statements. Free narrative contamination. When a person speaks freely, without preparation, without a lawyer, without knowing they are being recorded, they sometimes include details that contradict their prepared account. Not because they are careless, because the brain defaults to what actually happened when the pressure of conscious narrative construction is removed. Brian was not in an interrogation room when he spoke to Blaine Stevenson. He was on a call with a friend. To his prepared statement, the one he gave police, the one his attorney released, the one he posted on Facebook, described rough conditions, a terrible accident, a night he could not control. His free narrative, the one captured without his knowledge, contained one word that describes something different. Bounced. Investigators who study suspect accounts know the gap between a prepared statement and a free narrative is often where the truth lives. Brian's free narrative slipped, and it slipped toward a word that should not be in a story about an accident. But bounced is not the only thing Brian said on that call that investigators have noted. Blaine Stevenson told CNN one of the reasons he recorded the call in the first place was because Brian described the geography of that night with precision. On the specific location where Lynette went overboard, the anchor point of the Soulmate, the direction of the winds, the position of the current. A man who had just paddled 7 hours through rough conditions in the dark, who arrived at a boatyard at 4 a.m. exhausted, described the specific coordinates of what had happened with the clarity of someone who had been thinking about those locations very carefully. Investigators noticed that precision, because precision in a free narrative, when exhaustion and grief should produce confusion, is its own kind of data point. And the GPS on Brian's own devices, his phone, the navigation apps he was using that night, may tell investigators whether the route he described matches where his phone actually was. Phones leave trails, even when people think the ocean covers them. Now the life vest. Because this is where Brian's account physically contradicts itself in the simplest possible way. Brian told Carly in a voicemail, shared publicly with CNN, that Hopetown Search and Rescue found the flotation device he threw to Lynette when she went overboard. His exact words in that voicemail, "Hello, honey, it's Dad. I just got a call from Hopetown Search and Rescue, and they have found the flotation device that I threw to Mom when she fell overboard." The device was found. That part of Brian's account is confirmed. But Coffindaffer heard that and said something that cut straight to the center. She said, "He says he threw her a life vest or a floating device." And that really doesn't make sense either, because she could have grabbed it and that would be the end of the story. Read that slowly. Honey, if Brian threw a flotation device to Lynette, he was close enough to throw it to her, which means he was close enough to see her, which means she was within throwing distance of the dinghy. Lynette was 55 years old, strong swimmer, a decade-long sailor, a woman who grew up on water. She was within throwing distance of a flotation device, and she never grabbed it. There are only 3 explanations. 1, she was already incapacitated when she entered the water, injured or in medical distress, unable to swim toward anything. 2, Brian threw it in the wrong direction, away from her, deliberately or not, and it landed somewhere she could not reach. 3, she was not where Brian says she was. She was not within throwing distance. The throw was symbolic, or worse. And every one of those explanations means Brian's account of that moment is incomplete. And the Apple Watch, confirmed found by a U.S. Coast Guard officer who called Lynette's mother directly, may tell investigators exactly which explanation is true. Because the watch recorded Lynette's location, and the watch recorded what her body was doing when that device was thrown. If she was incapacitated, the data shows it. If she was swimming, the data shows it. If she was nowhere near where Brian says she was, the data shows that too. The flotation device was found. Lynette wasn't. Coffindaffer's question has not been answered. If she could have grabbed it, why didn't she? Now the devices. This is where the investigation may be building towards something that has not been made public yet. From Bahamian police executed a search warrant on the Soulmate. Court documents reviewed by CBS News confirm the warrant authorized seizure of a digital video recorder, tablets, and cell phone equipment, seized because they may contain material evidence related to a missing person and causing bodily harm. That warrant was granted. Those devices were taken, and they are being analyzed. Coffindaffer told Newsweek specifically what she believes investigators need to find. She said, "They need to look at his Google searches. I'll be interested to see if he Googled anything." Smartphones retain search history, not just what you searched, but when, time-stamped, to the minute, sometimes to the second. If Brian searched for anything in the days or weeks before April 4th that is inconsistent with a man who had no idea what was coming, that search history is on the devices now in evidence. What would an innocent man have searched for in the weeks before a boating accident? Weather forecasts, navigation routes, sailing apps, the normal digital footprint of 2 people living at sea. What would a man who was planning something have searched? Coffindaffer did not say. She did not need to. The question itself is the point, and beyond the searches, the communication record. Every text, every email, every direct message, every communication in the weeks before April 4th. Lynette had been texting a friend. Brian Anton confirmed it publicly. She was telling someone she wanted off the boat, that she wanted to end the relationship. Those messages came from Lynette's phone, but they arrived somewhere. They exist in a record. And if Lynette was telling a friend she wanted to leave, was she also telling Brian? Was there a conversation between them in the days before April 4th that investigators have now read about the relationship ending, about the soulmate, about money, about what happens after 25 years? Those conversations, if they happen digitally, are inside the seized devices. Lynette told her mother 1 month before she disappeared she could not take it anymore. Did she say the same thing to Brian? The devices know, and investigators are reading them. There is one detail about the shore versus yacht contradiction that connects directly to the Apple Watch data. Our Brian told police he last saw Lynette swimming toward shore. He told Blaine, in the call he did not know was recorded, that he thinks she tried to swim back to the sailboat, shore, yacht, 2 different directions. The Soulmate was anchored approximately 1,000 yards from where Lynette went overboard, 9 football fields, in rough water, at night, without a life jacket. The shore, according to Captain Bill's analysis of the Abaco geography, was in some places reachable in water shallow enough to stand in. If Lynette was swimming toward shore, she may have had a real chance. If she was swimming toward the Soulmate, 1,000 yards in the dark in rough water without flotation, the physics are different, brutally different. Did Brian tell police she was swimming toward shore because shore gave her the best chance, and he wanted investigators to believe she could have survived? Or did he tell his friend she was swimming toward the yacht because that is what he actually saw? The Apple Watch GPS data may answer that question directly. If the watch recorded even a partial location track after Lynette entered the water, investigators know which direction she was moving. That direction either matches what Brian told police, or it matches what Brian told his friend. It cannot match both. One of those accounts is wrong, and the watch recorded which one. Before we get to the financial question, the survival window. Because understanding where this investigation stands physically requires understanding what 15 days in the Bahamas Ocean means. Water temperature in the Abaco Islands in April, approximately 76 to 77 degrees Fahrenheit, warm by most standards, still lethal after enough time without flotation. Emergency diving expert Ben During confirmed publicly, people do not think you can get hypothermia in the Bahamas, but after about 15 to 25 hours in water that temperature, you can. In the first minutes, cold shock, involuntary gasping, heart rate surge. The gasp reflex can cause water inhalation before the person realizes what is happening. Most drowning deaths happen in the first 30 seconds to 3 minutes. After 4 to 6 hours, core temperature drops. Shivering burns what is left of the body's reserves. After 12 hours, muscle function compromised, cognitive function impaired. After 48 hours, survival medicine is unambiguous. Without flotation in open ocean, survival is exceptional. Documented in research precisely because it is rare enough to be remarkable. Lynette has been missing 15 days. The search converted from rescue to recovery on April 7th. Former FBI agent Jennifer Coffindaffer said it directly. The possibility of finding Lynette alive is very remote. The cadaver dogs are not looking for a survivor. They are looking for what the ocean gave back. And the investigation, both in the Bahamas and at the federal level, is building a case that does not require finding her alive. It requires the truth about what happened on that dinghy. And that truth may be inside the devices. Now the financial question. Because this has been mentioned publicly by a named source and has not received the analysis it deserves. Lynette's mother, Darlene Hamlet, told Ashley Banfield on the record that Brian stood to benefit financially from Lynette's death. The specific details of any life insurance arrangement have not been released. Brian's attorney has denied any financial motive. That denial is on the record, but Darlene said it, named, on record, to Ashley Banfield. And it connects directly to what Coffindaffer said about the devices. They need to look at his Google searches. What would a man with financial reasons for his wife to die search for in the weeks before she disappeared? What would appear in the browser history of a man who, freely, on a recorded call he did not know existed, described that night as a cascade of failures? Those searches either exist or they do not. If they do not, the devices support the picture of a man blindsided by a terrible accident. If they do, the devices tell a completely different story, and Coffindaffer said she will be interested to see, so will everyone following this case. There is something Darlene said on Banfield's podcast that belongs at the center of this investigation. She described the cycle that Lynette lived inside for years. Lynette left Brian more than once, a year and a half, 2-year cycles. She would come home to her mother, stay a few weeks, then go back. The last time Lynette came home, it was after the strangulation. She had bruises on her back. She took photographs to remind herself. She was at Darlene's house in Florida, looking for a job. She was trying to leave permanently, and then she went back. And the morning after that strangulation, Brian told Lynette he wished he had finished the job and thrown her overboard. He said those words on their boat. Before April 4th, that is sourced to Darlene Hamlet, named, on the record. Brian denies all wrongdoing. But Darlene said those words were spoken, and now Lynette is in the water, and the devices are being read, and Coffindaffer wants to know what Brian Googled. Let's talk about Carly. Because her presence in the Bahamas, while Brian is in Michigan, is not just emotional, it is investigative. Carly arrived with her boyfriend Steve Hansen. They gave formal statements to Bahamian police. They are retracing Lynette's last steps. Talking to the sailing community that was in those waters on April 4th. The sailing community in the Abaco Islands is tight. Captain Bill described it. When something happens, everybody hears about it. People see things. People remember things. Carly is talking to those people. Hansen said publicly, "We're frustrated because we haven't found her yet, and we would hope by now we would have." And Carly told CNN after Brian's release, "I don't think this is the end." She is a 28-year-old woman in the Bahamas looking for her mother while her stepfather is in Michigan. She is asking questions nobody else is asking in the same way. Why did he row the other way? Why did she never grab the flotation device? Why did he say bounced? Those questions have answers. The devices may contain them. And Carly's formal statement to Bahamian police, which she gave on the record, contains everything she knows about Brian's history. The 2005 child abuse charge, the strangulation in 2015, the second domestic incident in 2025. The words Brian said to Lynette on their boat, that he wished he had finished the job and thrown her overboard. All of that is now in the formal investigative record in the Bahamas. All of it is being read by the same people analyzing the devices, and the question they are building toward, piece by piece, data point by data point, is the same question Carly has been asking since the morning of April 5th. What actually happened on that dinghy? Let's look at Brian's behavioral pattern as a timeline, because behavior tells investigators something devices cannot, and devices confirm what behavior suggests. April 5th arrives at Marsh Harbor at 4 a.m. 2 words. Search begins 8.5 hours after Lynette went into the water. April 6th, posts on Facebook, calls it a boat accident in unpredictable seas, says search is his sole focus. April 7th, calls Blaine Stevenson, does not know he is being recorded, says bounced, says cascade of failures. April 8th, arrested. April 9th, questioned for more than 3 hours. Relationship with Lynette. Whether he caused harm resulting in her death. April 13th, released. Walks out of Central Police Station, does not speak to reporters. April 14th, goes back to collect his wedding ring, puts it on his pinky finger, gives 3 interviews, NBC, CBS, ABC, each with a different emotional register. To NBC, Lynette is my life. We belong to each other. To CBS, I believe people have lasted overboard for days and even weeks. To ABC, my one job was to look out for her, and that has not happened. 3 networks, 3 completely different tones. A man genuinely devastated does not modulate grief based on which camera is pointing at him. He speaks the same truth to everyone, because the truth does not change depending on the audience. But a constructed narrative does. Brian Hooker was calibrated, and the call he did not know was being recorded, the one where he said bounced, was the moment the calibration slipped. There is something else about those 3 interviews that deserves attention. Brian told CBS, "I believe I've been told that people have lasted in the Bahamas after falling overboard for days and even weeks." Pause there. I've been told. Not, I believe she is alive because I know the water and I know Lynette. I've been told. That is the language of someone managing a narrative, someone who has been briefed on what to say, someone whose belief in his wife's survival is based not on personal conviction, but on information received from an outside source. After 25 years of sailing together, a man who knows his wife, knows the water, knows what she is capable of, does not say I've been told when asked whether he believes she survived. He knows what he believes. I've been told is the language of someone performing grief from a script, and bounced is what came out when the script was gone. April 16th, Brian leaves the Bahamas. The cadaver dogs arrived the same day. Here is where the investigation stands. Day 15, Brian Hooker, in the United States, still a named suspect, confirmed by Police Commissioner Shanta Knowles to NBC News, not charged, not cleared. The devices from the Soulmate, phones, tablets, DVR being analyzed. Search history, text messages, GPS data, communication records, all time-stamped, all preserved under a search warrant. The Apple Watch confirmed found, data being read, heart rate, GPS, water immersion, movement, time-stamped to the second. Carly Aylesworth in the Bahamas, giving statements, talking to the community, retracing her mother's steps. Cadaver dogs working the shorelines, aerial drones, submersible drone operations, confirmed by the Royal Bahamas Defense Force, a U.S. Coast Guard criminal investigation active, federal probe, running parallel to the Bahamian inquiry. Brian can be rearrested. The investigation has not closed. It is paused at the charging threshold, pending further analysis, and that analysis is ongoing. Before the final picture, the engine question one more time, because this is the detail that Captain Bill confirmed, and that has never been fully absorbed into the public understanding of this case. Brian Hooker told police the engine was dead after Lynette took the lanyard into the water. He used that as the explanation for why he could not reach her, why he had to drift, why he ended up 4 miles away. Captain Bill confirmed publicly, "You can restart a dinghy motor without the lanyard. You pull the button out, you pull the cord, the engine starts." Brian had been sailing for over a decade. He owned the Soulmate. He operated that dinghy regularly. He knew the engine could be restarted. And here is the question that Captain Bill's confirmation creates for the device analysis. Did Brian search for anything about outboard motor kill switches in the days or weeks before April 4th? Did he search for how the engine safety lanyard works? Did he search for what happens when a passenger goes overboard with the kill switch cord? If he did, that search history is on the devices now in evidence. If those searches exist, they transform the engine story from a failure into preparation. Coffindaffer said she will be interested to see what he Googled. So will the prosecutors, who may one day have to explain to a jury exactly why a man who knew he could restart the engine chose not to. Let's build the final picture. Because when you line up everything that is confirmed and documented, what emerges is not a cascade of failures, it is a cascade of choices. Brian did not restart the engine. Captain Bill confirmed he could have. Brian did not drop anchor. Carly asked why. Brian did not use the radio. Captain Bill said every responsible sailor carries one. Brian said she was swimming toward shore, then told a friend she was swimming toward the yacht. Brian said she bounced off the dinghy, not fell, bounced. Brian threw a flotation device. Coffindaffer said if she could grab it, that would be the end of the story. She never grabbed it. Brian paddled 4 miles through conditions he said were too rough to reach Lynette. Brian arrived at 4 a.m., said 2 words. Brian promised to stay and search, left before the dogs arrived. Brian said, "Lynette is my life," wore his wedding ring on his pinky. Brian's mother-in-law confirmed on record that he told Lynette, after strangling her, that he wished he had finished the job and thrown her overboard. And Brian spoke freely on a call he did not know was being recorded and chose the word bounced. Every one of those facts has a named source. Every one of them is documented. And somewhere inside the devices being analyzed right now, there may be one more fact, one Google search, one text message, one GPS point. One communication that answers the question everyone in this investigation is circling. Was this a cascade of failures, or was it something else entirely? One final detail before the closing. The GoFundMe. Carly Aylesworth set up a fundraiser to support the search for her mother. She has been posting on social media urging people to help find Lynette. She is on the ground in the Bahamas doing what the official investigation cannot do, talking to people, asking questions, being a daughter who refuses to stop. She is 28 years old. She flew to the islands while her stepfather flew home. She is retracing her mother's last steps while investigators analyze the devices that Brian left behind on the Soulmate, and she has been asking the same questions since day one. Why did he row the other way? Why did she never grab the flotation device? Why did he say bounced? Those questions are in the public record. Named sources, documented, confirmed. The devices may finally answer them, and when they do, the word bounced may be the sentence that starts a prosecution. Lynette Hooker loved the ocean. She called it her happy place. Her last words online were, "Not going anywhere for a while." She was 55 years old. She deserved a husband who came back for her. She deserved a flotation device she could reach. She deserved someone who restarted the engine. She deserved more than 2 words at 4 a.m. The ocean is still holding her. The dogs are still looking. The devices are still being read. And somewhere in those files, in the search history and the text messages and the GPS records of a man who described the worst night of his life as a cascade of failures, there may be the answer to everything. What did Brian Hooker search for before April 4th? That question has an answer. Investigators are reading it right now, and when we know what it says, we will be here. There is something about Darlene that deserves its own moment in this video. She is 76 years old. She drove to the Bahamian consulate in Miami to get an emergency passport so she could travel to the islands. She went on Ashley Banfield's podcast and spoke on the record about everything she knew. She said, "I had been preparing for a terrible phone call about Lynette for years. Years. Not weeks, not months. Years. I'd been a mother who watched her daughter return to a man who had choked her, who had told her he wished he had thrown her overboard, who had made her take photographs of her own bruises to remind herself what she was returning to. A mother who drove to Miami alone at 76 years old because she needed to do something, anything, to find her daughter." And what Darlene told Banfield, the words Brian said to Lynette on that boat, are now part of the formal investigative record. They are being read by the same people reading the devices, and the devices are being read by the same people analyzing the Apple Watch, and the Apple Watch recorded every heartbeat on the night of April 4th, timestamped to the second. From the moment Lynette put it on in the morning to the moment the signal went dark. The truth about what happened on that dinghy is somewhere in that data, and Darlene, at 76 years old, is waiting for it. If you have any information about Lynette Hooker, contact the Royal Bahamas Police Force or the U.S. Coast Guard. Both investigations remain active. Lynette Hooker, 55 years old, missing since April 4th, 2026, from Onstead, Michigan. She deserves answers. Her daughter, on the islands right now, deserves answers. Her mother, who told Banfield she had been preparing for a terrible phone call for years, deserves answers. Subscribe, like, and tell us in the comments, what do you think is on those devices? The conversation in the comments on this channel is worth reading, and it helps more people find this analysis when the next update drops. This video presents analysis based exclusively on publicly documented evidence and statements attributed to named sources. All individuals referenced are presumed innocent unless formally charged and convicted. Brian Hooker has not been charged with any crime. His attorney states he categorically and unequivocally denies any wrongdoing. The recorded phone call referenced was confirmed by CNN as recorded by Blaine Stevenson without Brian Hooker's knowledge. The Apple Watch data and device analysis has not been publicly confirmed by investigators. The forensic capabilities described are based on publicly documented specifications and established legal precedent. The purpose of this channel is to examine documented evidence, not to prosecute, advocate, or speculate beyond what confirmed reporting supports. The silenced case, where documented evidence reveals what someone decided you shouldn't know.